Georgia, no surprise there. In the state of Virginia, we now rate that race too close to call. The polls having just closed. We're basing this on exit poll information, of course. In South Carolina for president, that race is still too close to call, we believe. In Kentucky, however, we project President Bush the winner in that state. We project the winner as well in the state of Indiana. And we project John Kerry the winner in the state of Vermont. You should know, by the way, you're watching election night coverage on the Fox News Channel. Good evening. With polls closed in 6 states, it is already a busy night. Beside the early returns from the presidential races that we have just showed you a moment or two ago, we do have some Senate and gubernatorial races to report. Let's take a look at them. In Georgia, we report the winner there will be Johnny Isakson. He's the Republican. That is the Zell Miller seat. That is a pickup for the Republicans. Zell Miller, of course, was a Democrat. In South Carolina, this is the race between Jim DeMint, the Republican, Isaiah Tenenbaum, the Democrat. That race at this hour is too close to call. Similarly, in Kentucky, where the incumbent Jim Bunning has had the race of his life from the Democrat there, Monjardo, that race is too close to call. Early count you see in there favoring Monjardo, still well too close to call that. In Indiana, we project the incumbent Democratic popular Senator Evan Bayh, a winner there, and we can't say the margin. It's now 68%, but that's just getting us started here. And as well in Vermont, Pat Leahy, veteran Democratic incumbent, the winner there. Only one of those is a gain or a pickup, and that is the seat in Georgia, a pickup for the Republicans there. In addition, gubernatorial races, we rate this this race here in Indiana between Mitch Daniels and his Democratic opponent too close to call. Similarly, in Vermont, we're looking at the race there, and that gubernatorial race we also believe to be too close to call. As noted in the final days of the campaign, the race tonight will come down mostly to just a few swing states. Let's take a look at them. And Ohio, a critical state there. That was a Bush state in 2000, and it is one which no Republican has ever been elected without winning. Right. Well, that's obviously critical there. Really critical to both candidates. That is one critical state which we'll be keeping a close eye on. Another, of course, is Florida. This is another state that President Bush won by, as we all know now, the narrowest of margins 4 years ago. It's got 27 electoral votes. It is a big prize. It is critical to George W. Bush. Pennsylvania, this is a state Al Gore won, which John Kerry will very much need to hold on to. Should he lose it for any reason, and we may know early because the polls close relatively early in Pennsylvania, that would spell serious trouble for him. Iowa is a state also won by Al Gore 4 years ago, though narrowly. It is one that the Bush camp has felt that it has a good chance of winning this time. Only 7 electoral votes, but they could help offset a loss in Ohio or Florida. Wisconsin, another state won by Al Gore. John Kerry hoping very much to hold on to it. 10 electoral votes. It'd be a nice pickup for the Republicans, and the president has polled well, very, very well there in the closing days of the campaign. Similarly, in Minnesota, this is a state that it's kind of hard to imagine a Republican winning in anything but a landslide, nationwide landslide. But the president hasn't done badly there in recent polls. John Kerry actually stopped in there in the final days, signaling his desire to hold on to it. A state, of course, won by Al Gore. New Mexico, another one. The president lost that by something like 350 votes 4 years ago, and it's a place where he's been back to many times. John Kerry's been there to try to defend it as well. 5 electoral votes in play there. Also, Colorado, another red state, won handily by the president 4 years ago, or more handily than it seemed in the early part of that night when it looked like he was doing badly. He will need to win and hold that state as well tonight. Those are states we'll be watching very closely, as well as New Hampshire, a state that has kind of trended Democratic in recent elections, although the president won it 4 years ago, and it was a pickup, as I recall, for him because Bill Clinton had won it, I guess, twice. West Virginia, another one-time perennial for the Democrats, won by the president 4 years ago. I don't think John Kerry has been to West Virginia in some time, so we can calculate that that is a state that he may have given up on, but nobody knows until the votes are counted. All night long, the best source anywhere for election information is our Fox News race ticker. It's at the bottom of your screen. On your left is a running updated count of the electoral votes from states where all the polls have closed and where Fox News has been able to project a winner. In the middle of the screen, the returns by state for the presidential race, Senate and governor's races if they apply, and certain selected House races. In the center is an alert bar where you will find breaking election news. Now, we're going to take a quick look at a couple of the boards in states where the polls have closed. Virginia presidential race, we rate that at this hour too close to call. Similarly, in South Carolina, we rate that race too close to call. We're going to take a brief break now. Okay, the polls have closed in a few states, and there are presidential as well as Senate races, obviously, in those states. And let's take a look first at Georgia U.S. Senate race, where we're projecting the Republican victory tonight. That is a pickup for the Republican Party. Johnny Isakson, the Republican candidate in that race, he was running against Denise Majette. Denise Majette may be known to some of you. And we're looking at South Carolina. We're rating that too close to call, by the way. And the similar situation we have in Kentucky. A little back for a moment to this Georgia Senate race. Kind of an interesting race there. Johnny Isakson winning that race. Now from 7:30, at 7:30 the polls closed in 3 states: North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia. And we do expect to be able to tell you something at the bottom of the hour about some of those races. In fact, so if you just bear with me for 4 more seconds, I'm allowed by the political gods to do. Ohio presidential race too close to call. No surprise there at this hour. North Carolina, similarly, too close to call. West Virginia, however, Fox News now projects that President Bush has carried the state of West Virginia, which he carried also 4 years ago, so that's not what we call a net pickup for him. George Voinovich, popular Republican incumbent senator in Ohio, we project him a winner tonight. In North Carolina, we project that Governor Easley, the Democrat, has won re-election. We also project that Manchin, the Democratic gubernatorial candidate in West Virginia, will be elected. None of those things is a surprise. Virginia presidential race remains too close to call. We're uncertain as to exactly why. Kerry's up in early returns by, as you can see, a 14% margin. Nobody expects that's going to hold. And President Bush way up in early South Carolina voting. Not enough in yet to project, just a few thousand votes, as you can see there. So that gives you a sense of why we're saying those races are too close to call. Before we go, let's take a quick look at the raw vote count as we have it so far. There you go. As we roll through the ticker here, there it is, 57-42 President Bush. That's with only 1% of the nation's precincts in. No way you can tell anything from that nationally. We'll be right back. Let's get caught up on some of the other races we're keeping an eye on tonight. Joining us to do that, as she will through the evening, is Fox News anchor Martha MacCallum. Martha?
Hi there, Britt. Thank you. As you mentioned before, there are about 9 or 10 key Senate races that we're watching very closely tonight. They sort of make up the weave that goes behind the presidential race that will tell what the balance of power will be like in Washington. Democrats would need to pick up 12 seats in the House, net gain seats, in order to take over a majority in the House. And there are 11 states that are going to be electing a governor tonight. Let's take a look at some of the races and see how they're stacking up right now. This is South Carolina. We've said that the presidential race too close to call in South Carolina. This race also too close to call. Inez Tenenbaum and Jim DeMint, 57% for DeMint. This is a very interesting race at this point. 47% of the precincts in right now. Jim Bunning is lagging behind Dan Mangiardo, 53-47. That would be a big loss for that incumbent, Jim Bunning. Indiana, U.S. Senate, no big surprise here. 61% going for the incumbent, Evan Bayh. No surprise here as well. In Vermont, a state that has already gone for John Kerry, Patrick Leahy, the incumbent senator there, is winning tonight. Too close to call. This one, Clooney versus Davis. This is, of course, Nick Clooney, the actor's, George Clooney, I should say, his father. He is losing right now 43-55%. 40% of those precincts are in. A lot of Hollywood money has gone into his race. Interesting to see how that turns out. Kentucky, we have Miller versus Ann Northup. Northup with 62%. She's defending her Republican seat there in Kentucky and has won several races in tight races in the past. Indiana Governor, Joe Kernan versus Mitch Daniels. This is George Bush's former OMB director. Interesting race here as well. 54% going for Daniels right now. Joe Kernan, who is the incumbent, took over for Frank O'Bannon after he suffered a stroke. He's in at 45% right now, and that is with just 15% of those precincts reporting. So we're going to keep a close eye on all of these races for you, Britt, and the panel throughout the night. I'll send it back to you.
All right. It's almost 8 o'clock, and a rich harvest of poll closings occurs, including Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, D.C., Florida, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, Missouri, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, Tennessee. And we were going to be able to tell you about, we're going to have some calls to make in some of those states. We know you're going to be very interested in them. Both calls for both the presidential race and the Senate race as well. So stand by. It's 8 o'clock for president in Florida. Polls just closed. Too close to call. Same thing in Pennsylvania. Too close to call. New Hampshire. Too close to call as well there. Important state. New Jersey, however, Fox News now projects John Kerry will win the state of New Jersey. That is a state that there was some thought he might be losing traction in. It appears not. Fox News projects John Kerry the winner in New Jersey tonight. Illinois, no surprise there. John Kerry the projected winner. Tennessee, President Bush, no surprise there, projected a winner. President's projected the winner also in Oklahoma. That's a state he won 4 years ago, as is Missouri, but we rate that race in Missouri too close to call. We'll try to check in with the decision team to find out why. Massachusetts, no surprise at all there, of course. Home state of the senator, he wins in Maryland. That's expected. The winner in Maine. Now, there are 4 electoral votes. We're allocating only 3 in our projection there. There's a 4th that may be up for grabs there. We'll explain that later. Mississippi, we think, is too close to call. No one expects the president not to win there. Alabama, the president a projected winner there. Delaware, not a surprise. Senator Kerry, the projected winner. Connecticut, same thing. District of Columbia, really no surprise. Illinois, that's a gain for the Democrats with the victory of Barack Obama. The only question is, how much of a majority will he get? Not a lot of competition there from the Republican Alan Keyes, who came from out of state. Florida Senate race, we rate that too close to call. We also rate the Oklahoma Senate race too close to call. And in Missouri, we do project, however, that Christopher Kit, as he's known, Bond, is a winner, incumbent. Pennsylvania Senate, our inspector expected to win there, but the fact that it's too close to call is kind of interesting. He is well ahead, it seemed. Chris Dodd, veteran Democratic senator, incumbent from Connecticut, he's a winner. Maryland, Barbara Mikulski, also a veteran and popular Democrat in her home state. New Hampshire, we're not calling that yet. Judd Gregg, son of the veteran New Hampshire politician Hugh Gregg, and the incumbent Republican senator is expected to win. You can see he's ahead, but we're not calling it yet. We are calling Alabama, however, for the incumbent Republican Richard Shelby, he a former Democrat.
The Bush
well, let's
camp.
take a quick look.
But we haven't seen a single red state become a blue state yet.
Now, let's take a quick look at just recapping a few of these boards on states. Ohio president, too close to call, folks. We're not calling that one yet. We're not calling North Carolina yet, although we expect President Bush to win that. Not calling Virginia, same reason. Look, president's ahead. South Carolina, he's also ahead, but it's a little closer than we would like in order to call it. Major thanks. We'll be back to you later. You may have noticed, folks, if you've been watching that screen, that the electoral count, which Kerry was leading 77-66, has changed now. President Bush 74. The reason for that is that Fox News now projects that President Bush has won the state of South Carolina. That's one we've been kind of scratching our heads about, because it was one that he was certainly expected to win and won 4 years ago. So that bumps into the president's column tonight, and maybe for a moment at least allays some of the worries that Fred Barnes has about how we're going to call a state too soon. Before we do, let's take a look at the tally of the popular vote nationwide as we have it so far. This isn't really very meaningful, but it's kind of fun to keep an eye on, with a tiny share of the precincts in, about 1 in 25, 56-43 for President Bush in the popular vote, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Speaking of too close to call races, let's just run down some of these boards at places where the polls have indeed closed. In Florida, we rate that still too close to call. The president up in the early countdown there. It looks like a lot of votes, 1 million for the president, 800,000 for Senator Kerry, but that's a big old state, 24% of the precincts in Pennsylvania. We're rating that too close to call. And as you can see, we don't have a lot of information about what's there. Ohio as well, we got no percentage of raw vote there. North Carolina, we got a fair amount, president well ahead, but that's only 3% of precincts. So you can see why we're not prepared to call that. And we got a similar situation. Well, Virginia, beginning to get, but we're not even 1 million votes in Virginia. It's too big a state, I think, to make too early a call based on that, unless all the key precincts line up. Similarly, in Mississippi, we don't even have an ability to tell you how much raw vote there is, so there obviously probably isn't very much at all. So take a break here. But as we do, let's take a look at the national popular vote count as we have it at this moment in the presidential race. 56-43 for Bush, still only a scant 4% of the precincts in, still millions of people reflected in that number, and don't you forget it. We'll be right back. We got a call we can make now in New Hampshire, where polls have been closed for a while. We can now project Judd Gregg, favorite incumbent to win that. That's not a shift. He's a Republican senator, son of the late Hugh Gregg, who was the first President Bush's campaign manager in that state 24 years ago. Now, how's that for a piece of useless trivia? Let's check in now with Fox News anchor Martha MacCallum for an update on these races and some others. Martha?
Hi there, Britt. Thank you. One of the interesting questions at the end of tonight will be whether or not John Edwards made the right decision when he gave up his Senate seat in North Carolina. Let's take a look at what is going on in that state for a moment here. We have Richard Burr versus Erskine Bowles, who is, of course, the OMB director for President Bush. 52-46 right now. That's with 6% of the precincts reporting. And remember, a lot of people thought that John Edwards might not hold on to his seat had he decided to stay in North Carolina. So we'll see what the future holds for him tonight. There's a look at South Carolina, which we have now projected the winner for the presidential race there as President Bush, but it is still too close to call between Inez Tenenbaum and Jim DeMint there. And Kentucky, this one getting a little bit closer, tightening up with 71% of the precincts in for the incumbent Jim Bunning, 49%. Former professional baseball player versus he's known as Dr. Dan Mongiardo there in Kentucky. Here's Ohio. The U.S. Senate race has been called for George Voinovich. He's the incumbent there with 59% against Eric Fingerhut in Ohio. Here's a look at the Vermont race. Vermont loves its independents, Jim Jeffords and Bernie Sanders. He's getting reelected tonight with 71% of the vote in Vermont, which has also gone for for Senator Kerry, with just 5% of that vote coming in right now. But that race has been called. Georgia. Here's a look at Marshall versus Clay. This is the second time that these two have gone head-to-head. Marshall won the last time in a very tight race. He looks to be ahead right now with 61%. That's just 12% of those precincts reporting right now for Georgia. And here's a look at the North Carolina governor race. Ballantyne versus Easley. Easley is the incumbent. He is at 59% with 6% in, but that race is being called as well as expected. No big surprise there. West Virginia governor race being called for Joe Manchin at this point with 73% in West Virginia. So that's a look at some of the races, and we'll keep you posted. Brett, back to you.
All right, Martha, thanks very much. We're now able to project a couple of states that we've been wondering about for the presidency. In North Carolina, we project the president has won there, and we project that the president has indeed won the state of Virginia, ending the speculation, presumably, at this table about why those states which seem so certain to go for the president hadn't. Well, now they have. Well, we got a couple of things to update you on. The calls we've just been made, which have made a change in that electoral vote count in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. We called North Carolina for President Bush. We are projecting the president the winner in Virginia as well. No surprise in either of those cases. The only surprise was it took as long as it did. We're also projecting another incumbent Democrat will win in the Senate. That is Blanche Lincoln of Arkansas. That represents no change, obviously, she being an incumbent. All right, let's take a look now at some states that we are watching closely but can't project. Florida, we still can't. Totals mounting up there, almost 30% of the precincts in. Pennsylvania as well. This must be coming in slow. We don't even have any sense of how much of the raw vote is available from Pennsylvania. Similarly, New Hampshire. Surprising that we haven't been able to call Missouri, perhaps. That's one the president is supposed to win. Really, the Kerry people kind of conceded it a long time ago. He hadn't been in there or spent any money in there in a long time. But Mississippi, we'd love to know what's going on there. Nobody thinks in America, I don't think, thinks Kerry will win Mississippi, but we can't call it yet. So, all right, we're going to check in with our colleague Brian Wilson down in Washington for some sense of just an overall picture of these Senate races. Brian?
Well, you know, there are really about 9 races that are very competitive. It really could come down to how these 9 races come out. The current balance of the Senate, as you know, is razor thin. It's 51, 48, and 1. But let's go through some of the competitive races tonight. We won't have a chance to go through all of them, but here are some of the ones to watch as the night progresses. We may not get this one for quite a while. This is Lisa Murkowski. She's currently filling the seat that was once filled by her dad. That's been controversial there. Tony Knowles, a former Democratic governor. But the polls close very late in Alaska, and there are a lot of absentee ballots. It may take some time to count. If it's close as the night goes on, that may take a while. Colorado, boy, this is a close race. Pete Coors, who's a beer baron, he's the great-grandson of Adolf Coors, going against the Attorney General Ken Salazar. We'll expect this to be a late night on this race as well. The numbers will be going very late, and the race is very tight. In the state of Florida right now, we have had some numbers here, but it's still very close to call. Right now, 52% for Martinez, 46% for Betty Castor. Martinez, the former Secretary of HUD. Betty Castor is, of course, a superintendent of education in the state of Florida, former superintendent, and this is going to be a tight race to watch all night long. Now we go on to, this is the most interesting race of the night. Some of the northern precincts in Kentucky have not yet come in, and that's where Bunning is supposed to be strong. But right now, Mongiardo, a doctor from the Appalachians, is doing very well, 51-49. Bunning, 73-year-old, had some missteps throughout this campaign. This is, again, one very close to watch. We have to explain this kind of complicated situation in Louisiana. You got to get more than 50% to win. And although Mr. Vitter, David Vitter, is doing very well, he's the Republican candidate in the polls, he's got a couple of Democratic candidates. There will be a runoff here, and if it's a very close race in the Senate, we may have to wait a while to find out where the control is, because Louisiana will have more than likely a runoff after tonight. And let's go to North Carolina, where we have another pretty interesting race here. We have a Representative Richard Burr up against Erskine Bowles. Richard Burr has been leading in some of the polls, but only by a slight margin. Erskine Bowles, of course, is the former chief of staff to Bill Clinton. This, again, a very close race and one to watch throughout the night. We'll have some more to come to you with a little bit later. Britt, back to you.
All right. Okay, let me just make a couple of, we're able to make a couple of calls here. No great surprise in either. Well, one of them is an important one. This is Tom Coburn, the Republican congressman who had been thought to be in some fairly serious trouble against an attractive challenger, Brad Carson, in that race. That is a seat that Republicans very much needed to hold, and it appears that they've done so tonight. Dr. Coburn got himself in trouble with a lot of statements that were deemed impolitic at best. This is a call we're making with only 3% in, but we believe he's the winner. We also believe the Indiana Democratic Governor Kernan is going to win that seat out there. So we believe now. I'm sorry, we're misreporting that. That board was wrong. We're reporting that Mitch Daniels. We're projecting that Mitch Daniels, who is the former OMB chief for President Bush, is the winner tonight. There's another former OMB chief or former chief of staff on the. There's the board, and there's the right answer. Half the precincts are in. We project Mitch Daniels the winner in that race out there in Indiana. That's the governor's race out there in Indiana. We're coming up here on 9 o'clock in about 45 seconds. There's a slew of poll closings. We're going to have some results for you, and there's some fairly big states in play here. Polls are closing in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Colorado, New Mexico, all battleground states. So we'll have something to tell you about the state of the race in those two places as well. Some Senate races we're going to be able to call for you, or not call, but at least report on as well. So stay with us for the next few seconds here, and we'll be able to run down all of that for you. And we're just about 10 seconds away. A number of these remain too close to call, but there are within them some interesting ones. So as the 9 o'clock hour arrives, we can tell you that in Michigan, the presidential race remains too close to call. As you can see, only 1% of the precincts are reporting that we have so far. Similar situation as well in Minnesota. And same thing, Wisconsin, all three too close to call, all three battleground states. Colorado, another important state, one the president needs to hold, too close. New Mexico, this was a blue state, a Gore state, too close to call. Louisiana, this would be a state the president would need to win and to hold, too close. You see just the precincts are, a lot of them, it says 77% are in, and it's 11-11. I think we can throw out that data and wait for better data later. In New York, we project no surprise here. Big trove of electoral votes, but no surprise. John Kerry, the winner in New York. And another big electoral prize, President Bush, the winner, no surprise there in his home state of Texas. South Dakota for president, we project, no surprise here. The president will win. The question is whether he'll carry the Republican challenger in the Senate over. Nebraska, very red state. President wins also Kansas. These are all states he won before, these last two. Arizona, we're saying Arizona's too close to call. That hasn't been a very heavily contested state, but the president certainly expected to win there, but not able to make a call yet. We are calling Wyoming, Dick Cheney's home state, for the president, projecting him the winner in that state, along with Dick Cheney, of course. North Dakota, this is not a surprise either, projection for the president. And in Rhode Island, we say John Kerry is the projected winner there. So you add, and some Senate calls here. Can't call, the polls have closed in South Dakota, can't call the Daschle Thune race. That could be a very late night on that one. Also, we can't call the Colorado U.S. Senate race. That would be a pickup for the Democrats if they got it. They haven't got it yet. Tight race out there. Louisiana Senate, that's a three-way deal. The question really tonight is whether Vitter, the Republican, can get 50%, and we can't tell you that yet. If he got 50%, then he could avoid a runoff. Otherwise, we won't know about that race until sometime in December. Vitter is clearly going to be the Republican nominee. The question is which of these other two chaps he'd have to run against. Chris John is favored to be his opponent if it comes to that, but we'll see. Kansas, Sam Brownback, he's the incumbent Republican senator. He has won, we project. We project John McCain an easy winner as well in Arizona. Byron Dorgan, Democratic incumbent, winning in North Dakota. Russ Feingold, the incumbent in Wisconsin. I believe we're projecting him the winner, although that board does not show that. So if that's not true, I'll check back with you on it. And we project Chuck Schumer, the incumbent Democratic senator in New York, a winner as well. So, and we'll just take a quick look back at that Oklahoma Senate race where we believe that Tom Coburn, the incumbent congressman, will be a winner there. But a couple of things we can now see. Vermont. We can tell you that we project now that the Republican will win the governorship of Vermont, and in North Dakota, we project there as well that for governor there, the Republican will win there as well. I don't think either of those is a great surprise. All right, that is the list of states there that we have projected a winner. As you can see, red is the Bush states, blue the Kerry states, all of them former Gore states, and the red states are all former Bush states. So nothing has changed hands. A brief break. When we come back, Martha MacCallum will update us on a number of races. Stay tuned. Okay, let's take a look, just to run down this long list of states where polls have closed but races can't yet be determined. Florida, you see the president leading in raw vote there. A lot of precincts in, but not able to make a call there yet. Too close to call still. Pennsylvania is the same thing. Kerry overwhelmingly ahead, but you see it's only 7% of the vote is in Pennsylvania, so it's way too soon to call on the basis of that. New Hampshire, we've got some vote in, narrowly Kerry ahead, but no call available to us there either. No projection yet in Missouri. President narrowly ahead, only 9% of the vote in. Precincts reporting, I should say. Same thing, similar situation in Mississippi. That's supposed to be a sure Bush state. 8% in, not enough to make a projection yet. Missouri, similar situation. The president slightly ahead in what's in, but as you see there, only 9%. We got this. Well, we're going to go back and forth, it appears, between these two states, Mississippi and Missouri. We've explained that as best we can. We have a similar situation in Michigan, in Minnesota, in Wisconsin, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. So we'll await those updates on those when we have a little bit more to tell you. In the meantime, let's check in with Martha MacCallum, who will run us down on some other races. Martha?
Hi there, Britt. Well, one thing we do know about what the president is up to tonight, he has just put in a phone call to Johnny Isakson, who will take over Zell Miller's Democratic seat in Georgia. Isakson is a Republican, and the president has called to congratulate him on that. Let's take a look at some of the other races where some longtime incumbent senators are turning over their seat when this election is over. There is the Oklahoma race. Democrats were fairly optimistic about Brad Carson in this race, but Tom Coburn looks to be the winner in that race with just 13% of the precincts in, feeling pretty confident about calling that one. Here is Florida, very tight race, 48-50, favoring Martinez at this point, with 54% of those precincts in, Martinez being one of two Hispanic Senate candidates who are out there this time, including Ken Salazar. And let's take a look at the next race, which is Illinois. Barack Obama, 81%. We knew that this would be a big swing in favor of Barack Obama, who has been running against Alan Keyes. That's a Republican seat that was held by Peter Fitzgerald, who was a one-time senator in the state of Illinois. All right, let's take a look at North Carolina. This is John Edwards' seat. Erskine Bowles, who is up for that seat, 47%, 52% for Richard Burr, the congressman from North Carolina. That's 20% of the precinct reporting there. And let's move along to Kentucky, which has been very interesting. Seems to be tightening up a bit. 91% of those precincts in. We understood that some of the ones that were coming in later may be in favor of Jim Bunning, who's the incumbent in Kentucky, and it does look to be tightening a bit in Kentucky. We'll continue to follow that. Alabama looks to be called for Richard Shelby, who is the incumbent there, 61%, with 10% of those precincts reported. Pennsylvania is shaping up to look very interesting. 13% of these precincts coming in. Arlen Specter, thought to be somewhat invincible in Pennsylvania. The administration putting their support behind him in the primary race, 36% for Specter. But Huffle is at 61%, Joe Huffle in Pennsylvania. So that's one to keep an eye on closely tonight as well. Connecticut, this is another one that nobody thought would be close. Diane Farrell putting in a pretty good showing here at 42% right now. Only 6% of the precincts are in. But Chris Shays thought to be a little bit more vulnerable in Connecticut that many people would have expected in the early going. And that's a look at some of those races. We expect to get a little bit of information coming in about South Dakota, the very important Tom Daschle, John Thune race going on there, and also Colorado. We should be getting some results in for the next time around. Brett, back to you.
Okay. We do have one additional projection we can now make. This in Louisiana for president. This is a state the president was expected to carry, and we now project that he has done so. This stayed too close to call for longer than anybody expected. Florida, what's your take on Florida?
Very close. I was there, and it looked to me when I was there that the president was probably going to have maybe a 3-4 point win, and that Mel Martinez was going to win. It looked like they had a great organization. Looked like the enthusiasm was up over 4 years ago.
Well, we just have a call to make. This is an important one because this will be a switch. In South Carolina, Fox News now projects that Jim DeMint, the Republican congressman, will defeat Inez Tenenbaum, the former state education official down there. I guess she's still the state education superintendent down there. She's a very attractive candidate who gave DeMint, in what is a pretty intensely Republican state, a run for his money. We now project Jim DeMint the winner in South Carolina. That is a pickup of one. I guess that's a net pickup now for the Republicans of one seat so far. Democrats would need a net pickup on the night overall, a long way to go yet, of 2 in order to take control of the Senate back. So that would mean they'd need to do even better in the remaining races than we.
Well, they only need
a couple.
We are able to add one more state to the president's column. No surprise here, but we're now able to project, as we knew we ultimately would, Mississippi for President Bush. The only question was why it took so long. As you can see, Mississippi hasn't been exactly lightning fast. Precincts only 21% in as we make that projection for President Bush. Whereas on, it's 10 o'clock. Polls have closed in several other states now. In Iowa, the polls are closed. Too close to call. No surprise that it's too close to call. Nevada, that's a state supposed to be a Bush state. That's too close to call. Utah, there was never much doubt about Utah being a Bush state. It is. But Montana remains at this hour not able to be called. In Senate races, Nevada, we project Harry Reid made the winner. No surprise there. He's the deputy Democratic leader in the Senate. He was expected to win. He has done so. We project that Senator Chuck Grassley is a winner, although there's no check mark by his name. We do project him a winner, as we also project Senator Robert Bennett a winner in Utah. So Florida for president, we're just going down the list here, too close. Pennsylvania for president, we projected that for Senator Kerry, although there's no check mark there on the screen. New Hampshire, we have projected for, I believe we projected, have we not projected that? Yeah, no, that's still out there, too close to call. Missouri, still too close to call. President up there, expected to win, only up a little bit, though. 19% in, that may be what's holding that up. Michigan, the president ahead. That's a Gore state. That's way too close to call. You can see there are only 5% of the precincts yet reporting, so that's a little slow on the uptake on getting the raw vote to us to analyze. So we are seeing that as too close to call. Minnesota, still too close to call. That's a blue state, a Gore state that Senator Kerry will want very much to win. Had been expected to. Wisconsin, 9% in only. President up, but that's early returns. Too close. Colorado, same deal, 6% there. Too close. That's a red state. New Mexico. This was a Gore state where the president had thought he had a chance. Tiny amount in. Too close to call. Arizona. This is a Bush state. Expected to win. Kerry hadn't campaigned there in forever, if he ever did. But it's too close. Now, in New Mexico, this is not a surprise, but we do have a winner in the governor's race we can project. This is Bill Richardson, the very popular former energy secretary, former congressman. We have projected him the winner, and there he is. I noticed in that list of states we had too close to call, we mentioned Pennsylvania. I had thought that we had called Pennsylvania earlier in the evening. Am I wrong about that?
I didn't hear it called, but I mean,
I didn't either.
I think
we did not. Then if I ever said that, folks, I stand corrected and I apologize. I had thought that, and I think that was one of the states where the exit poll gap was such that I must have imagined, perhaps, that. Let's take a look at it now. Kerry way ahead, 37% in. That's not a lot of votes. So those precincts must be in some less populated areas, perhaps, which would not bode particularly well for the president, because places like Philadelphia are expected to go heavily for Senator Kerry. But Western Pennsylvania, on the other hand, where Senator Rick Santorum has been so active in trying to get new voters registered on the Republican side and organized for the Republicans, and which has been kind of his political base, as he has turned out to be a surprisingly successful politician, perhaps. We also haven't been able to make a call, I believe, in that Pennsylvania Senate race. Of it is Martha McCallum to update us on some other races. Martha?
All right, Britt, thanks very much. As we said at the beginning of the evening, 9 Senate races, key Senate races up for grabs tonight. We're going to take you through 7 of them right now. And let's start off with Kentucky, which has been very interesting tonight. But you can see right now Jim Bunning, the incumbent there, former baseball player, been in Washington quite a long time, in the Senate since 1998 and in Congress before that. He's at 51%. That is 99% of those precincts reporting in Kentucky. So it looks like Dan Mangiardo may be losing the edge that he had earlier in the night. North Carolina Senate race, Erskine Bowles, the former chief of staff for President Clinton, putting up a tough race against Richard Burr here, Congressman. 39% of the vote is in North Carolina, and that is, of course, John Edwards' Senate seat that is up for grabs there. And let's take a look at Florida. Very tight race, 49-49 right now, with 78% of the precincts in. So we know that the presidential race is too tight to call in Florida, and we're not getting any real clue here from the way things are shaping up in the Senate race either, which looks to be very tight between Betty Castor and Mel Martinez, who is a housing secretary for President Bush. This is another one that is a bit of a shocker, at least at this point, with 40% of the precincts reporting. Arlen Specter, longtime Pennsylvania senator, getting a good run for his money from Joe Huffle, who is a Democratic congressional candidate there, 51%, with 40% of those precincts in, much closer than expected for Pennsylvania. South Dakota, really the granddaddy of all the Senate races tonight. Of course, the Senate Minority Leader Tom Daschle, 51% in South Dakota right now. John Thune had been leading earlier in this race, but we only have 21% of these precincts in, and the Native American vote is said to be very significant, very important, I should say, in the outcome of this race. In fact, Tom Daschle launching a lawsuit against John Thune with regard to how the efforts that they've made to bring in those Native American votes. So a very interesting battle going on in South Dakota that we're going to continue to follow very closely this evening. This one also very close. Colorado, not yet called in the presidential race. Ken Salazar is the Democrat putting up a good fight here against Pete Coors, who is, of course, the beer magnate. This is Ben Nighthorse Campbell's seat. It should be pointed out that he's a Republican, but he used to be a Democrat. So this is a seat that Democrats would love to get back on their side. Right now, too close to call. And as you can see, only 7% of those precincts are in so far tonight for Colorado. Let's take a look at Louisiana. This is a three-way race. The winner of this race, in order to claim this seat, has to get at least 50%. David Vitter has had a very strong race so far as a Republican. Louisiana has never had a Republican senator, but if he doesn't get 50%, there'll be a runoff on December the 4th between Chris John and John Kennedy and David Vitter until one of them gets a 50% of that race. So that's a quick wrap-up of some of the more interesting races going on. Some interesting shakeups look to be in the works, and we'll keep you posted on all of them. Brett, back to you.
Martha, thank you. We're now able to put another couple of states into the win column for the president. This is Missouri. We now project will go for the president with its 11 electoral votes. That was a state he's expected to win. Also Arkansas, where there'd been some last-minute feeling among Democrats that with a little Bill Clinton magic that they might be able to turn that state in his direction. Its 5 electoral votes are now in the president's column. That brings him to 193. He'd been at 177. I kind of wonder how he ever got to 100, and I thought he had anyway, how he got to 193, because 177 and 17 makes 194, but that maybe we can blame that on the exit poll. We got an intriguing situation in Kentucky. This is a state where a Democratic upset seemed very possible indeed, because the Republican incumbent, the former baseball great pitcher Jim Bunning, had made some misstatements that got him in trouble, and all the precincts are in now. Bunning is ahead by 8,000 votes there. 18,000 votes, excuse me. And we're not prepared to say he's winning, and Michael Barone is with our decision desk to explain why.
Well,
Michael?
Brett, I've talked it over with the decision desk, and basically we're proceeding with caution here. We've got an 18,000 vote margin for Jim Bunning. The last I've heard, there were 4 precincts left off, 3 in Jefferson County, which includes the city of Louisville, and 1 in Daviess County, which includes the much smaller manufacturing town of Owensboro on the Ohio River. We don't really expect those to overturn it, but sometimes, Britt, a mistake is made in tabulation by the state or local officials. That happened in 2002. We called a race for Don Siegelman, the incumbent Democratic governor of Alabama, who was ahead by a tabulated 9,000 votes. And it turned out the votes, I believe it was in Baldwin County, which is the Gulf Coast county just east of Mobile, were mistabulated. There was an error in the addition column or something by a state official, and it turned out that Mr. Siegelman was not reelected and Republican Bob Riley was elected again. So the note here is of caution to make sure that something like this kind of glitch doesn't come up. Better to be safe than to be sorry.
Understand it very well, Michael. Thank you very much. I think it is worth noting, however, that with an 18,000 vote margin and 100% of the precincts reporting, I guess 100% it must be a rounding error, because as Michael pointed out, there's still a few places that are uncounted, or at least untabulated, perhaps. That Bunning has claimed victory, and so we'll see. We're going to take a look now at the list of presidential states where the polls are closed, but we're not ready to call. Florida, perhaps the foremost one of all. 83% in, not ready to call it. Not ready to call Pennsylvania either. Kerry appears way ahead in what's in, with half the votes in. A lot to go there. New Hampshire, similar situation as well. Only 9% in Michigan. Those numbers really, they look big, but for a state like that, they're kind of meaningless. Similarly, Minnesota, Kerry ahead, too close to call. Wisconsin, same deal. Colorado, too close. New Mexico, not able to call that. Not able to call Arizona. You heard Bill Richardson on New Mexico earlier saying he thought in the end it would go late, but that Kerry would win it. Iowa, 4% reporting. That's not enough. Nevada, we got very little out of Nevada at the moment, as you can see. Not much out of Montana either.
We're going to have to wait for real vote now.
Our colleagues downstairs have taken some further soundings and conferred, and we are now prepared to project that with 100% of the precincts reporting that incumbent Republican Senator Jim Bunning has won re-election. Now, that is something that if this were 3 months ago, this is a race we wouldn't have thought we'd be paying much attention to tonight, because Bunning was in no trouble, it seemed. Jim Bunning is a man of strong views, and he has been known from time to time to express them in strong terms, and he did so. And the next thing you know, his challenger Dan Monjardo was challenging him seriously. He got into trouble. It's almost 10:30. We got to take a break. Be right back. We want to give you a sense of what's happening in New Hampshire, where the race remains too close to call. And at this hour, the two candidates are separated by something on the order of 400 votes. So here we go again. Stay tuned. More to come. We got a kind of a striking list here. It's almost 11 o'clock, and the race was said to come down to swing states. There's one too close to call. There's another one too close to call. Pennsylvania, yet another. We thought we were going to be able to call this early. Kerry appears well ahead, but we don't know what's in that. Too close to call. Similarly, New Hampshire, an important swing state. You wouldn't think that, little state, but Bush won it. Kerry thought he could. A lot of Bush people thought he could. Not able to call it. Michigan, same deal. Minnesota, this is a blue state. We thought Kerry would win this easily if he was going to have a big night. He may yet, but he hasn't done it yet. Wisconsin, president still ahead in the state that Al Gore won. President leading in Colorado, but we can't call it for him. Senator Kerry apparently still with a chance out there. New Mexico, same thing. That's a Kerry state. I mean, that's a Kerry Gore state. Arizona, this is a state the president won. We're not able to call it for him. Iowa, same thing. That's another swing state. Basically, this is a catalog of swing states. Nevada, that isn't really a swing state. The president, you would think, would be ahead there. We don't know what's going on. It looks like no data. Same thing with Montana. That looks like very limited data as well. We've got a call we can make. This is not a surprise, but it's an important state. Senator Kerry, we project, has won the state of Pennsylvania. Now, that is an Al Gore state, one he had been expected to win all along, where the president had made a showing and had been shown close in the polls. We're not able to characterize the margin there, but we do now project the state of Pennsylvania for John Kerry. That is the first of the big Rust Belt states that we've been able to call. We've also called New Jersey for Senator Kerry, and those two results, New Jersey went early, and we thought that was going to be indicative, and I think also all of us sitting at this desk tonight rather expected that Pennsylvania might soon go the same way, and it didn't. And the fact that it's this late takes some of the punch out of it as at least psychologically as a. Now, in North Carolina, this is an important race here. This is Richard Burr, the congressman challenging for the seat that had been held by John Edwards. We project now, Fox News projects that Richard Burr will win over a very well-qualified challenger, the former Clinton chief of staff Erskine Bowles, successful businessman, very popular figure in that state, very widely known, ran before, lost, of course, to Elizabeth Dole. We're going to take a break now, but
and then a House of Representatives.
11 o'clock, Fred. Hate to interrupt. California for president. Too close to call. State of Washington for president. Too close. Oregon, same deal. Hawaii for president. This is a state the Republicans have been going after with some hope, still close to call. However, we can give you Idaho. No surprise at all there. That's as red a state as you'll probably find. The president, big winner there. California U.S. Senate, Barbara Boxer, no surprise, incumbent Democratic senator, wins. We project. In the U.S. Senate seat there, that's too close to call as well. That's George Nethercutt running for the Senate. He's a congressman who was elected in the Republican sweep in '94, and he upended the then House Speaker Tom Foley He had a promise to be term limited, which he proceeded to break, and now he wants to be elevated to the Senate, and we find that race too close to call. There's an Idaho Senate race, I'm sorry, I mentioned that, and the Hawaii Senate race, I believe we're going to be able to project that. Yeah, Daniel Inouye, the veteran Republican, Democratic senator, he's been there since a very long time. This must be about his, this must be his sixth or seventh term, right? He was
there forever.
I mean, he was there a long time, remains popular. It's probably the most watched non-presidential race in the country, and that, of course, is the Senate election campaign out in South Dakota, where the current Democratic leader, Senator Daschle, is utterly deadlocked there. They're separated now by less than 1,000 votes, about 700 votes between them. Congressman Thune ahead. Only 42% of the precincts are in out there. I don't know where that stuff is or anything about the Indian reservation tabulation out there. What can you tell us, if anything? We can give you a result now for president in Washington, a projection there that Senator Kerry will win that. That a blue state was expected and needed to win by the senator. Still not a single shift. Let's check in on the little state, the Granite State, that has become so critical a state in all of these discussions tonight. It is close as it can be up there. Let's check in with Michael Barone for some thoughts and information on what we're seeing there. Michael?
Well, it's New Hampshire is the Granite State, and both the candidates are trying to chip away at it in all its cities, towns, locations, plantations, and gores, which are units of local government and election reporting in New Hampshire. 4 years ago, this was a 48-47 Bush state. Right now, we're showing tabulated vote with 50% for John Kerry, 49% for George W. Bush. And looking at the town by town and city by city returns, Britt, I don't find any clear pattern here. You can look at, you can look at Manchester, where Bush is up 1, Kerry is up 2 from 4 years before, or Nashua, where Bush is up 3, Kerry is not up from 4 years before. And then you turn around and see something like the college town of Keene in the Southwest, where Bush is down 1 and Kerry's up 7. That was a hotbed for its Vermont neighbor, Howard Dean, in the primary period in New Hampshire. No clear picture on how New Hampshire's spinning. Some of the places, Manchester, as last I saw, 8 out of 12 precincts, wards have reported. Nashua, 8 out of 9, but the city of Portsmouth, left-wing leaning, is out. So no telling where it's going to go.
So this lead that Senator Kerry has here, percentage point, you don't consider to be meaningful at this point?
I would not predict on the basis of what we've seen here. What it isn't like is the early exit polls that showed John Kerry with a big margin. Okay, the exit poll takes another hit. All right, Michael, we'll be back to you soon. Thanks very much. I'm sorry. We're now projecting in Washington State that Pennsylvania Senate, we have a projection there. This took a while. Senator Specter, the incumbent Republican, we believe a winner. That's not a surprise. Patty Murray, the incumbent senator there, winning out over George Nethercutt, whose term has finally, it seems, been limited. Thanks very much. We have a House race to call. It's an interesting one because this is one of these cases where redistricting put two incumbents against each other. And let's take a look. This is the 32nd Congressional District in Texas. And we project that Pete Sessions, the Republican, is the winner over Martin Frost. Martin Frost, a member of the Democratic hierarchy in that state. He's also been the head of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in the past. Very skilled politician there, and we project that his congressional career, at least for the moment, is over tonight. Republican Pete Sessions, the winner. We're going to take a break now, but as we do, let's take a look at the nationwide state picture in terms of red and blue states and see if we can spot in there anywhere a red state that has gone blue. No, any blue states red? No, not yet. So everything is in form. The election is still very much out there. We got much more to come. Stay with us. Here, but before we do, we can project a winner in Arizona for president. That's President Bush, as expected. Still, no blue state has gone red, no red state has gone blue. That's the state of the national election picture at 11:20. We're taking a break. Be right back. We got a projection. This is
this is still no change. But in Montana, a state in the Mountain West thought safe for the president, he's won.
So I think Florida is going to come back for the president, and that is going to make, well, here, let's look at these numbers. So Bush is up by almost 300,000.
Yeah, he's got a
5%
margin.
of the precincts out. So you can do the math. 5% of the precincts out is about 350,000 votes out. So unless there's something funny, unless there's a huge number of absentee ballots that are being contested, it would have to be huge. It looks to me like Bush wins. Florida, incidentally, if you look at I've been looking at the raw numbers, it looks like Florida turnout's going to be about 15% higher than 2000. It looks to me like national turnout's going to be up at least 10%. Looks like there'll be 120 million voters this year, I think.
Let's look at the Ohio board now. This has become the focus of attention for the entire political world at this moment. Raw vote out there, president up slightly, 61% in, president up by what, 132,000 votes. In a state the size of Ohio, 132,000 votes can be overcome with another, with only, of course, when you say 61% of precincts in, that's done by number of precinct, not by population. So we don't know what proportion of the raw vote is still to be found out there, and how much opportunity there may be for Senator Kerry to make up that difference. But we are nowhere near prepared to call that race. We are prepared, however, to talk about why and what signs there may be of which way this might end up going with Michael Barone, who is down with our decision desk. Michael, can you provide us some further insight on Ohio? That looks, to the naked eye, like a reasonable lead in Ohio for President Bush. What are your thoughts?
Well, Britt, I'm just looking at some of the tabulated vote figures here in the different counties, and I'm seeing a number of different things. I'm concentrating this time on the large counties, Cuyahoga County, which includes Cleveland, and majority of it's suburban. But Democrats got 166,000 vote majority for Al Gore here. About half the precincts have counted there. We're looking at a plurality for John Kerry of about 94,000 votes. That's well short of the 166. The problem here is I don't know which precincts haven't reported from Cuyahoga County. If the Cleveland precincts are all in, that's very good news for George W. Bush. But if this is mainly suburban precincts, there could be more big number of votes coming in for John Kerry here. On the other hand, the second largest county, Franklin, 3/4 of that is in. George W. Bush is behind 47 to 52. That's a little worse than his showing in 2000. Not a good sign. There's also a big reservoir of votes that haven't been reported in Hamilton County, Britt. And one of the problems in Hamilton County, as I understand it, is that the county prosecutor got involved in some kind of shenanigans and for whatever reasons withdrew his candidacy, and both parties are backing write-in candidates for prosecutors, so they're taking a long time. Hamilton County's only reported 219 out of 1,018 precincts. Currently, it shows Kerry carrying at 50 to 49. That is, however, basically a Republican county. The suburbs are very heavily Republican. That means there's probably a reservoir of Republican votes out there that hasn't been counted yet. Clermont County, too, just east of Cincinnati. You got 52 out of 191 precincts there. That's 70% for George W. Bush. That's approximately the kind of margin that you would expect for a Republican candidate out of Clermont County. Rob Portman, the congressman who takes some of the part in debate prep for the president, Mr. Cheney, is from that county. It's a fast-growing county. So there are reservoirs of votes possibly for both candidates. Now, where there aren't big reservoirs of votes, Mahoning County, which is a heavily Democratic county around Youngstown, and Trumbull County. These counties are producing over 60% for John Kerry. That's the good news for him. The bad news is there's only 18 precincts left in Mahoning County. There's somewhat more left in Trumbull, so that's not a big reservoir of votes for him. Stark County, only a third of the votes in. That's a very closely divided county. So the answer is it's possible that John Kerry could cut into George W. Bush's lead. It's possible that he could overcome it. But there are also large reservoirs of likely Republican votes that haven't been counted yet here. So We don't know what the turnout is in the big county, in the big cities. We don't know where those Cuyahoga County votes that are sitting there on the board and the Franklin County votes come from. So we got to leave you with some element of uncertainty about the result in Ohio.
I must tell you, Michael, as I listened to that at 11:30 at night, or just past 11:30 at night, it doesn't sound like we're anywhere near being able to make any calculations or any projections about Ohio, does it?
Well, if if as many precincts report within the next hour as have reported approximately in the last hour, if I've been keeping track of my time and my precincts carefully, we should be narrowing down the number of unlikely reservoirs of votes for either side down to a sense where we can probably estimate whether or not a Bush margin or a Kerry margin can be sustained in Ohio.
Very informative, Michael. Thank you very much. Let's check in with Martha McCallum for information on some of the other races. Martha?
Hi there, Britt. Well, some of the surprises have actually come up in the Senate races. Very strong night for GOP Senate candidates. Let's take a look. We're going to start, though, with South Dakota, where we'll get a look at whether Tom Daschle has a chance of holding on to his minority leader position in the Senate. 49-51. John Thune looks to be ahead right now. 61% of the precincts reporting in South Dakota. But we know that there's already been one lawsuit filed last night on behalf of the Daschle folks with regard to the Native American vote. This is one that we may not get a final decision on for some time and may indeed be contested. John Thune lost his last Senate race to the junior senator in South Dakota by 524 votes. So he is clearly looking for a win here. We'll see what he's able to pull off tonight in terms of South Dakota. Let's take a look at some of these other Senate races. I think we have Louisiana coming up next. Do we have a look at Louisiana? Let me just get you up to speed on what's going on there. David Vitter is putting in a very strong showing. He needs to be better than 50%. You can see he's at 52% right now. This is a big surprise. There has not been a Republican senator from the state of Louisiana. The two gentlemen there, Chris John and John Kennedy, are the Democratic runners in this race. But if Vitter gets over 52%, there will be no runoff on December 4th in the state of Louisiana, and he will be the first Republican, and that would be a big pickup for the Republicans. This is a look at the Florida Senate race. We know the presidential race too close to call at this point in Florida. This one also too close to call. President Bush has put a lot of support behind Mel Martinez, his former housing secretary, and this race is still very tight. 97% of the precincts in is still too close to call. Ken Salazar, interesting. He is one of several Democratic candidates who chose really not to campaign with Senator Kerry when he came calling in their state. He did make one late appearance with John Kerry, but it's a very moderate state, and in many of these states, the Senate candidates felt that it might not serve them well to be seen campaigning around the state with John Kerry. So we'll see how that ends up working out for Ken Salazar, who's at 51%. Peter Core is at 47% right now. Alaska race, one that the Republicans want very much to hold on to. Lisa Murkowski is the incumbent there. Her father held that seat. He turned it over to her when he became the governor of Alaska, and she's up against Tony Knowles, who's the former Democratic governor of Alaska, and that race still too close to call, but we're keeping a close eye on that and also a very close eye on South Dakota, Britt, and we'll send it back to you.
Okay, Chris, thanks very much. It's just after the midnight hour. Let's look down the list of presidential races that we have not been able to cover state by state. The president's still clinging to a lead a slight lead in Ohio, too close to call. Other networks have called this. We're relatively sure that the president is going to win this. We're just out of an abundance of caution, we're holding back on this. But this is all but in the president's column. New Hampshire, too close to call. Similarly, Michigan, too close to call. Minnesota, the same. Wisconsin, same thing. Now, Colorado, the president looks well ahead there. Probably will win that, but we're not calling it yet. We are being very careful, as we are indeed in New Mexico, where the lead is smaller for the president, about 12,000 votes, just under 12,000 votes. And in Iowa, we see Senator Kerry with a lead. It's, about 225, 215 votes, something like that. That is way too close to call at this 21,200, I should say. Nevada, this is another one which which we expect the president might win. But look, Kerry's up with only 6% in. So
that 6%'s wrong because there's too many votes.
Too many votes for that. Okay, well, we'll try to figure that out in a little while. In California, early going, no expectation that the president could pull an upset there. Senator Kerry will probably win that state. And Washington for president, that check mark, pay no attention to that. That state has gone, and we believe that it is gone for Senator Kerry. Oregon, Kerry well up. Not yet to be called, although it's getting a little late. And Hawaii, we got very little out of Hawaii yet, so we're not making a call there either. So that's the rundown. Oh, Idaho, we've called that for the president, and no surprise there. So at this hour still, 4 minutes past midnight, 5 hours and 4 minutes after polls started closing, not a single state has changed hands. Not a red state has gone blue, nor a blue state red. And the one we're all most intensely focused on is Ohio. But we're also wondering about Wisconsin. There's been very little about Wisconsin. Let's check in with Michael Barone and find out why. Michael, what do we know at this hour about Wisconsin?
Well, the tabulated vote that we've got in Wisconsin right now, Britt, is 50% for John Kerry, 49% for George W. Bush. That's about as close as it comes. 13,000 votes separated. We haven't got any counties in here that I've seen that we've got full precinct returns, so it's hard to make back-to-back comparisons with what we saw in 2000 when George W. Bush narrowly lost this state 47.6 to 47.8% for Al Gore. Right now, Democrats, two big counties in this state are Milwaukee County. They're leading by about 83,000 votes. They won that county by 88,000 in 2000. I don't know whether the remaining counties, remaining precincts in Milwaukee County, of which there are about 170, are in the suburban areas in which you'd expect a small majority for John Kerry, or perhaps even for some for George Bush, or in the city of Milwaukee, in which case you'd expect a big margin for a bigger margin, but I suspect from the numbers on the board that probably the central city figures are up there. Dane County is the other big county. John Kerry had a monster rally there with Bruce Springsteen in the last days of the campaign. That's Madison, the university county. You know, it's one of those hip university towns that's very left-wing. John Kerry's got a 60,000 vote margin. 4 years ago, Al Gore won with 66,000. There's still about 70 precincts left there, so that he could expand the margin. On the other hand, there's room for Republicans to expand their margin. Waukesha County, directly west of Milwaukee, relatively affluent suburban area. That has a 59,000 vote margin for George W. Bush right now, and there are still some 60 precincts. It's running 68% for Bush. Ozaukee County, just north of Milwaukee on Lake Michigan, that's got a 8,000 vote margin for George W. Bush. It was 16,000 last time. Half the precincts are still out. And Washington County, northwest of Milwaukee, that's a suburban and rural area. There's a 12,000 vote margin right there now for George W. Bush. It was 23,000 last time, and more than half of another 26 precincts are open there in Washington County. In addition, we've got an awful lot of rural counties that just have a few returns, and you can't draw many conclusions, but I will look at this. One of the areas that George W. Bush's advisor, Karl Rove, felt that he underperformed in 2000 was western Wisconsin, a beautiful hilly country along the Mississippi River, where the president's 2000 campaign plane wasn't able to get in. They've lengthened the Dubuque runway. Air Force One got him in there, and George W. Bush was on a buscade within the last 10 days. And current figures, fragmentary figures, not full precincts, show him ahead in La Crosse County, where he made a stop in Onalaska, and in Grant County, where he made a stop in Cuba City. So we'll see if the rest of those numbers bear out Bush's recovery in western Wisconsin.
Okay, Michael, interesting. I just want to ask you about something that Susan Estrich was saying earlier about Cuyahoga County. Her sources among Democrats are suggesting that Cuyahoga County holds out enormous promise for the expansion of the Kerry vote there in Ohio. And based upon what's already in and what you've seen, does that bear that out?
That's possibly true. I simply don't know, Britt. I mean, it depends on how much of that vote is already from Cleveland and close-in suburbs like East Cleveland, where you have a high African-American population and you have an overwhelming Democratic margin, or whether or not you're getting out to some of the farther suburbs or on the west side in places like Westlake, where Bush stopped before. I don't have that information, so I can't give you a definitive view on that.
Anything else you can give us on Ohio as we move along here? Obviously, would be. I mean, everybody says this is the ball, really the ball game here.
Well, Cuyahoga County 4 years ago, the percentage for Al Gore was 62.5%. It's showing 62.98% for John Kerry right now. That's almost spot on from before. 36.51 for Bush, and the incomplete returns 4 years ago, he got 35%, so he's slightly up. Those returns sound like they're the average. They may be the average for the whole county, in which case the fact that you've got 450 approximately precincts left out there, or about 1/3 of the precincts, suggests that that 120,000 lead could go up perhaps to 180,000. That would be a plus 60,000. Bush currently holds a lead in Ohio of 120,000. So it would narrow down that lead, cut it roughly in half, but there would still have to be a lot of play in the rest of the county if my suppositions here are correct.
All right, Michael, this is very interesting. Thank you very much. We'll be back to you. Oh, boy, will we be back to you, and soon. Thank you. Now, let's make a quick declaration here about Oregon, a state we expected to go Democratic for president and now has. That adds not much to some of our knowledge. And we're also projecting, to the surprise of no one, that California will also go for the Democrat John Kerry. So that leaves us, it leaves us exactly where we've been since this morning. Just kidding. Be right back. Stay tuned. This is something of a technicality at this stage, but Fox News is now going to make the official call on the state of Florida for President Bush by 98% in. He's up, 5%, if that's right. But that bumps his electoral vote total, at least up on our screen, to 237 and leaves him within striking distance, obviously, if he carries of Ohio over re-election. So we continue to follow that with considerable interest. All right, Greta, thanks. We're now projecting, as you might have noticed on your screen, the president bumped up 246 electoral votes now by virtue of Colorado being added to his total of states. That, of course, is a Bush state, so still we don't have a change. But the president inches within 24 electoral votes of re-election based on the states that have been projected. I guess I mentioned New Mexico. Yeah, well, there you go. There's Ohio. That 129 or 130,000 vote lead persists. We're now up to 79% of precincts in. Everybody seems to have a story in each campaign about their path to victory there, a comeback by. Now, Nevada, Kerry up slightly, 3,000 votes, or 2,000 plus votes there, 3,000, I guess. And Wisconsin, Kerry up by, 15,000 votes plus, with a lot to still be counted. Iowa, similar situation, 17,000 votes there for. Now these we're talking here in this case, except for Nevada, about all red blue states that would be pickups for the president. Call we can make in the Oregon Senate race out there. That's Ron Wyden, the incumbent. I don't think anybody thought he was going to lose. You can see he's wildly ahead. Looks like he's got the guy doubled at this stage. A lot of precincts still to go, but we project him a winner anyway. That doesn't move the ball in the Senate configuration at all. He was expected to win. Let's take a quick break, come back, discuss Ohio further. Too close to call are now what this election is all about, and mostly about a tiny handful of them. Michigan, we haven't called. It looked like a state that would carry comfortably. He's up there by 73,000 votes, but with only about half the precincts counted. So we got a way to go there in Michigan. I don't know where the stuff is, so we can't tell whether those remaining precincts afforded the president a real opportunity to catch up to a lead of that size or not. But it's not that big a lead, as you can see, 73,000 votes. Okay, now let's take a. You'll notice that the Kerry electoral vote count has just ticked up by 1 to 207. That is because we have now allocated in our count to Senator Kerry a 4th electoral vote in the state of Maine, which he won. There's a complex formula by which a single electoral vote out of that state's 4 is awarded. So we gave him the 3 were decided early when we projected he carried the state. This 4th one has now been awarded to Senator Kerry. I'm sure he's glad to have it, but I doubt he's focused very much at this hour on the state of Maine. So we continue to chew over this. Now, here's a few boards here. Look, there's Ohio. The president up by 128,000 votes, 82% of the precincts reporting.
Shrinking a little.
That's shrinking a little. The vote, his lead has shrunk, but it's been in the 120 to 130,000 range now for an hour or so, or at least it seems like an hour to me at this hour. And Wisconsin. 24,000 vote margin for Senator Kerry, with a lot of votes still out there.
That's widening.
That's widening for Kerry?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right, let's move on here. Iowa, 14,000 vote margin. That's about what that was, isn't it? For
It was
Senator Kerry?
17,000. Actually, it's a little down now.
Yeah, 76% of those in. President closing slightly in this latest round. President up now by 14,000 votes in New Mexico. That's a more meaningful margin in a state the size of New Mexico than it is in some of these other larger states. That's, 5 electoral votes in New Mexico?
That's right,
Yeah,
and that's a little larger than the last time we...
All right, and in Nevada, the president's trailing now by 5,000 votes, 4,000 plus votes. That's an important swing state.
It is, and that precincts number is wrong, I'm sure.
I think there's more than that in there, yeah. Although that state's grown a lot.
Really?
And in New Hampshire, the president's down by 9,000 votes with
Have they given it to Kerry?
have we called New Hampshire for Senator Kerry?
No, we can't.
We're just calling it now, folks. We have news. I'm always the last to know these things. I apologize. These screens on television always know more than I do, and they did this time. So we now award New Hampshire to Kerry. That is the first switch. The first red state to go blue. Not a blue state has yet gone red. This was the one, I think it's fair to say, that the Bush team thought it had the greatest chance of losing of the states they'd carried 4 years ago. So Senator Kerry picks up the four electoral votes in the state of New Hampshire and bumps him up to 211. Doesn't greatly enhance his chances of winning because redistricting had given him, now you say Minnesota, Kerry up there, but a lot of votes still out. You'd have to figure that with a 124,000 vote lead, he'd be in good shape. So we're not ready to call it, though. I was just going to say about New Hampshire. It was a near tie last time. The president won by 2 electoral votes or something like that. But the states he carried ended up with 7 more electoral votes. So New Hampshire alone can't even it. But it helps.
It helps greatly. Everything helps at this point. 12:30 at night. Everybody wants everything they can get.
Oh yeah, we're now projecting that race in Louisiana is over, and that Congressman Vitter will become Senator Vitter. Almost everything is in there. He had to get 50%. We're showing him at 51 at the moment. That means no runoff and 1 more seat for the Republicans in the Senate, putting the possibility of what does that give us? That gives us 54-45 with a couple of states still out there, Colorado and Alaska that they could lose, that could get it back to 53-47. That would be a net pickup of 2.
Well, and
South
Dakota.
South Dakota's still out there, so they can't lose it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The ones we know that are out there, they can't. So there's no way. I think we're now in a position where we can all but say that Fox News projects that the Republicans will retain control of the Senate, something that's not been in much doubt. Let's take a look at the popular vote nationwide. We got a ways to go here, but it's getting to the point where now we really do have some numbers. We got 71% of the precincts in across the country, and the president is up by 3%, which is. No, would be better than he did last time.
And it's a lot better than the exit poll.
Well, with that,
California.
we could just have, if Ohio goes against him, we could have Bush Bush winning the popular vote and losing the electoral vote, which is a flip of the last time around.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on that.
I wouldn't count on it, but it could happen.
There's a lot of California popular votes still out there, and I don't know how that popular vote's going to end up. It'll end up pretty close, I suspect.
You mean the popular vote nationwide will end up pretty close? You don't think the California popular votes end up very
I'm sorry.
close? Although,
all the Kerry votes from California.
What do you think? California would be like 55-45 or something like that for Kerry?
Yeah.
Boy, he does. That state really, ever since Ronald Reagan's career ended out there, California has been going south for the Republican Party.
Yeah, but this time the Bush campaign did something wise. Remember, in 2000, they spent about $12 or $13 million there, lost the state by 12 points, a state that Al Gore never visited the campaign.
Fox News is now projecting that President Bush will win the state of Ohio. Fox News now projects that President Bush will win the state of Ohio by whatever margin it turns out to be. That means that the president is now within 3 electoral votes of re-election at 12:41 and 20 seconds this Wednesday morning. President Bush, we project, Fox News projects, President Bush has won the state of Ohio. His margin is now up to 138,000 votes. We're not sure exactly how many are still out there to be counted, but 83% of the precincts are in. So this begins to look like the president needs very little else to win. If he wins New Mexico
or Nevada
Alaska
or Alaska
and Alaska
brings him to 269.
Alaska brings it to a tie, which means that if these results hold, and we think they will this time, there's no way at this hour, unless there would be a stunning presidential upset in Alaska, that we can see that John Kerry can win this election. Now, we don't have anything from Alaska.
Well, Alaska's a state.
The polls are still open in Alaska. They could win.
Alaska's a state that Bush is expected to win by 25 or 30 points, as he did last time.
Our decision desk has been so cautious tonight, and for them to be projecting Ohio, they must know what's outstanding in Ohio.
Well, you want to check into in a minute here, when Michael Barone is ready to talk to us, we'll check down there with him and see what the basis of this decision was.
There are also some legal issues in Ohio, and they must be pretty confident that the margin won't be just a few hundred or even a very single-digit thousand votes.
Okay,
I think if the margin gets above 10,000.
Bill, let me interrupt you to go to Michael right now. Michael, this is, of course, we still haven't had a state change hands, but this is the big enchilada so far. What do you know about the decision?
Well, I talked with the decision desk people, and they took the approach looking at the tabulated vote, not relying on exit polls in a state this close, and they gave an analysis that was roughly similar to one that I presented on this show and on Fox Broadcasting News, and that is to say that even if the Democrats, even if John Kerry gets a big margin out of the 1/3 of the precincts still left open,
not even that many, Michael. Is it that many left still open?
It's not that many. It's about 25% of the precincts left in Cuyahoga County.
Gotcha.
There aren't enough reservoirs of likely Democratic votes among unreported precincts to get John Kerry over the top, and there are some reservoirs of Republican votes, notably in Hamilton County, which includes Cincinnati, and therefore it's our analysis here at the Fox Decision Desk, the analysis of the decision makers, not of me, that this state popular vote is going to George W. Bush.
So all that would appear to be left, Michael, based on what we're counting out here, is barring a Kerry upset in Alaska, and he would have to run the table on remaining states, including Alaska, in order to get to 270. If he doesn't win Alaska, we have a tie, and if we have a tie, the election goes into the House, and the president would be reelected by virtue of the vote in the House of Representatives, correct?
That's correct. And from what we've seen tonight, I've been scanning the House races from time to time. We went into the election with 30 states having a majority Republican delegation. It seems likely that we'll come out with approximately that number, or at least 26 or more, which is the number needed to elect a president in the House.
All right, so we now watch carefully these other smaller states, New Mexico, Iowa, Nevada, and Wisconsin still is the biggest one, but he doesn't need enough electoral votes for Wisconsin. He only needs a handful now.
If Bush wins Alaska, and if we're right about Ohio, he's now ahead in New Mexico, and it looks by a decent margin.
14,000.
And that would give him a majority. We won't have a 269 to 269 nightmare.
Okay. We won't have a Bill Kristol posits that we won't get there. We're going to take a break now, but before we go, let's review the call we just made. Fox News projects President Bush, the winner of Ohio, brings his electoral total to 260 within within just a few votes of certain re-election.
If I'm right about New Mexico, and if
Alaska,
Alaska comes through in 10 minutes.
9 minutes and 18 seconds as we speak in counties. Let's look at that now. That is a lead of 19,000 votes, 79% of precincts in a state that size. That is meaningful. Agreed?
Yeah, they're only about 80,000, 85,000 votes out, so
Right, yeah.
a 20,000 lead's pretty big. It would have to be a 50-30 split.
And it's
for us to-
growing. I mean, the count has been building a little bit each time we swing around to it.
Let's look at some of these other close states if we can. Just as I look across here in the room at our monitor here, Michigan, Kerry up now by what, 182,000 votes, or 82,000?
Yeah.
82,000 with some room to go there. I wonder if that could close.
Closer than Ohio.
It's closer than Ohio, yeah.
More vote outstanding.
More vote outstanding. That's how many electoral votes? That's what, 17 for Michigan, right?
It's a widening lead, though.
Is it?
Yeah, it was 73,000 the last time we checked.
Okay. Michigan is one still outstanding. There are others, and as they appear, we will go over them with you. Minnesota, 119,000 vote lead there. It looks like for John Kerry, 59% in. That looks substantial, at least at the moment. You don't know what's still out in Michigan.
That was the state that the Bush people did not think they could win.
Right. Well, but they campaigned there a lot. I mean, the
Yeah, they
president
did.
campaigned there a lot. He hoped he could win. I think you mean as of this morning they didn't think
Yeah,
they
as
could
of
win.
yesterday.
As of
Yeah.
yesterday, right. Wisconsin, 24,000 votes with, well, there's a lot there. That's still tight. Oof. 1 percentage point or less, perhaps. In Mexico, that begins to look like a significant lead. 20,000 votes, small state. 80% in, 5-point lead for the president. Iowa. Man, that's down to
a dead
1,000
heat.
votes. That's a dead heat. So Wisconsin and Iowa together are what, 17, something
Right.
like that?
Or Iowa, Nevada, and New Mexico together are 19. I'm sorry, 17.
Now we haven't seen much from Nevada lately. Let's look at that. Kerry's still ahead there. Is that narrowing? I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's narrowed a lot, and not much of it in. So that's anybody's
The
ball
last time
game
around
there.
it was 3,000.
What is it now?
3,000.
Yeah, okay. And Hawaii, we don't have squat from Hawaii, as you can see here at 3 minutes to the hour of 1 a.m.
But the Iowa.
Okay, and we're coming up on 1 a.m. We now do project the state of Alaska, as the polls have just closed there, for the president by what looks like a substantial margin, which would mean that the electoral vote count now stands at 269 for President Bush by our projections against 211 for Senator Kerry. And that would mean that if this was the way it ended up and Kerry won everything else in sight, Senator Kerry won everything else in sight, that the election would be a tie. We have a call to make in Colorado on the Senate race, and this is a pickup for the Democrats that the Attorney General there, Ken Salazar, defeats the beer company heir, Mr. Coors. This was a close race. It was thought that Coors might be able to make it up in the end. Now you saw it switched over to the presidential outcome there. President Bush, we project, as others have, the winner in the state of Colorado. So. Also keeping track of Senate races. The most dramatic in terms of the people involved Senate race tonight is the one in South Dakota, which we have rated too close to call all evening. You see that John Thune, the challenger, is up 5,000 votes with 85%, of the precincts reporting we're not prepared to call that race. South Dakota is a pretty thinly populated place, and 5,000 is a significant lead. What we don't know, as I say this, and we'll find out shortly, is where all the outstanding votes in the remaining 15% of the precincts are. And that obviously accounts for the reason why caution dictates that no call be made in that race. Also in Florida, we have a very close race there. That's a 72,000 vote lead out of 7 million, roughly just under 7 million cast for the former Housing Secretary Mel Martinez over Betty Castor, who was the president of Florida Atlantic University, University of South Florida, excuse me. And that has been a close race all night. In New Mexico and Nevada, because the president is leading in New Mexico. He was trailing slightly in Nevada and had been throughout the evening. But as we've been hearing, the returns that were in were heavily from Clark County, which is Las Vegas. And Las Vegas is a Democratic stronghold. Other parts of the state, while they're thinly populated, are not nearly as thinly populated as they used to be. And they tend to come in more Republican. And Ken Melman, the president's campaign manager, who couldn't get the smile off his face while he was being interviewed by Jim Angle, was expressing some confidence about that state. So we continue to watch that with some care. Just as we look at it now, that's down to a lead of just over 199 votes. So that's not much, with only 24% of the precincts reporting. So we'll see. It'll be likely to be a while, though, from the look of it, before we'd be able to make a call there. One more state can now be added to the Kerry column. This is Minnesota, which Fox News now projects will go to Senator Kerry. It leads there, as you can see, by about 110,000 votes, with 30% or more of the precincts still to go. We don't think the president can make that up, and we declared Senator Kerry the winner, and the winner also of its 10 electoral votes. This was a state where President Bush had some hope late in the campaign and did some campaigning there, but as of a day or so ago, it was believed that state was gone to Senator Kerry, as it indeed now has. So that tightens things a little bit, but not very much. Let's see. We're just looking here for. We got. Let's take a look at the remaining 6 states that are still to be called for president. They total 48 electoral votes. This is New Mexico. The president with a 23,000 vote lead, 88% of the precincts in. That looks very close to being able to be called, which would give him the election, but not yet callable. Nevada. That has narrowed throughout the evening. There are only fewer than half of the precincts are in, and Kerry is clinging to a 2,000 vote lead. If double the number of precincts were in and it was a 2,000 vote lead, that might be meaningful, but it's not that meaningful at this stage, and it's basically a dead heat. Iowa, the president up now by 7,000 votes. He lost that by what? Just less than that, didn't he, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
92% of the votes in. The president narrowly ahead, and Mort Kondracki, who's been following Ohio like a hawkeye, tells me that margin has grown a bit. Wisconsin, Senator Kerry up 26,000 votes with 79% in. That looks like a lead that might hold. Michigan, Senator Kerry looks like he's beginning to pull away there, 109,000 vote lead, but some distance to go in Michigan. So we remain in need. If we're looking for a call in Hawaii, we don't have enough from Hawaii in to tell you very much, folks. Sorry about that. We're still watching for the possibility of a call, that Senate race, Mel Martinez versus Betty Castor in Florida. Let's check in with Brian Wilson, who's been keeping track closely of the Senate races tonight. Brian?
Well, this is a very, very close race. If we could go to the board, we'll show you just how tight this race is right now in the state of Florida. Mel Martinez is ahead by about 1%. Now, Fox News has determined this race is too close to call. Nobody apparently told Mel Martinez that, and he went and gave a victory speech just a short time ago. Take a listen to what he had to say.
I want to work in the next 6 years as your senator to let you know that I will be representing all Floridians, all of Florida. That'll be my job, that'll be my task, that'll be my quest.
Let's check in on the question of two states where the president has been leading, but we're not calling, Iowa and New Mexico. Let's check in with Michael Barone, who's down with our decision desk. Michael, what can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you in Iowa, Brit, popular vote, we're looking at George W. Bush with about 11,500 vote margin. That margin has been widening as we've gotten results in from Dallas County, which is immediately west of Des Moines, which is in Polk County. They're named after James K. Polk and his vice president, George M. Dallas. We've had some results come in from some of the rural counties like Kossuth County coming in for Bush. In addition, we've still got only about 124 precincts left out of 2,079, about 6% of the precincts going. Some of those, like there's 11 precincts from Calhoun County, that's a Democratic county. There's 11 precincts from Muscatine County, that's a Republican county, or Democratic county, excuse me. Those seem to be, so far as I can tell, reasonably well balanced. So you've got a county like Montgomery County in the far southwest of the state, the Omaha media market, which is pretty heavily Republican. I think it's unlikely. I haven't given it the kind of precinct by precinct analysis that I would if I had a greater amount of time, but my conclusion is it's unlikely that this Bush margin is going to be overturned. And so George W. Bush, who lost the state of Iowa by less than half a percentage of the vote in 2000, seems likely to carry it by less than 1%. The other state you're talking about is New Mexico. And here, the mystery is, the question is, what's going on here? And the biggest question is Bernalillo County. We've still got nearly 50 precincts out of 413 in Bernalillo County that are uncounted. That's Albuquerque. It is a swing county that goes both ways. Also, we've got just north of that Sandoval County. Used to be rural and Hispanic. There's now a town called Rio Rancho. We don't know what's going to happen there.
So your sense is, Michael, that it is unlikely that Kerry will recover in either of these states, but it's just not certain.
It's not certain, that's right. When you got Bernalillo County out there and you're not certain which kind of precincts it is, I would be unwilling to say that 27,000 vote margin that George W. Bush currently has absolutely positively cannot be threatened.
Okay, Michael, we'll be back with you soon. Thanks very much. We're going to take a break here in just a couple of minutes. But and if it ended up 269 to 269, that would throw it in the House of Representatives, where it can be safely presumed, as a result of what I'm about to tell you here in a minute, the president would be voted back in. Now, let's look at the Senate. It appears tonight the present count is 53-46 based on the races that have been decided so far for the Republicans. There are two outstanding that we haven't called yet. We haven't called Alaska yet, and we haven't called, what else? South Dakota, that's right, the Thune and Florida we haven't called yet. If all of them went Democrat, it wouldn't be enough, be 50-49-1 again. But it appears possible that Murkowski, who's ahead in Alaska, can win. It appears possible Martinez, who's already claimed victory, could win. That would get it up to 55. And we could end up with a 55-45 Senate. Nobody thinks it could be much better than that, but the trend has certainly been in the Republicans' favor. They gained 2 so far, could gain a couple more. In addition, the House of Representatives, which we haven't said a great deal about tonight because it was safely in Republican hands under any scenario that anybody could imagine. Now, the AP has a trend that it is projecting that looks like the Republicans may pick up a few seats, and according to these are estimates by the AP, and it would show a net gain of 3 votes for the Republicans in the House of Representatives, extending their control over the House for another 2-year term. So that is the broad national election picture at this hour. 97,000 vote margin for President Bush, with all but 4% of the vote, or all but 4% of the precincts having reported. We don't know where they all are. Michael Barone might, but that we'll see if that lead holds up. And we're looking also at New Mexico as we go forward here. And we're going to look back just for a second here at Ohio. I'm not sure the board will come up, but the tally is up to 96%. And I'm told that the raw vote total shows the president now with a lead of 128. That looks like 128,000 votes, with 97% of the precincts in. So that lead is actually expanded since an hour ago. When we first began talking about whether there were enough votes left out there to turn the thing around for Senator Kerry. We concluded that there weren't. If there weren't then, there certainly aren't now. Well, that wasn't a very long break. Florida Senate race, Mel Martinez has claimed victory, and he may have it, but we don't know for sure. And South Dakota, that race has barely budged in a while. 92% in, 6,000 vote margin for John Thune, the challenger over the Minority Leader Tom Daschle. Very closely watched race. And Lisa Murkowski, she was expected to lose big, I think. And she's not losing right now in that state, 61% in, and she's got a 16,000 vote lead, which you can see constitutes 8% of the vote thus far cast. So that raises some Republican hopes from further gains. If Thune holds on, if Murkowski holds on, I guess we'd get to, 54-46, and then there's one more
Martinez,
still and then Mel Martinez in Florida. If his victory declaration pans out, that would get to 55 Senate Democrats. 55 is a nice number.
It's completely
a race
different
to call here. This is not a surprise, but it is a big state. Michigan goes to John Kerry, and we see him now ahead by 97,000 votes with 78% in. That's a smaller margin than Bush is leading by in Ohio, but it is enough for us to project John Kerry the winner in Michigan, thereby boosting his electoral total up to 238 and bringing him so close to what could have been a jumping off point with a little help from Ohio to the presidency. Michael Barone is standing by with some further thoughts. Michael, what can you tell us about these remaining states?
Well, Iowa, Britt, we're seeing George W. Bush hold on to a 11,000 vote lead. There's not much in the way of other precincts. There's 66 precincts left out. They don't seem to be any in heavily Democratic areas now. That Wapello County, which is the city of Ottumwa, the small factory town in southeastern Iowa, have come in. So that margin possibly affectable by absentee votes. Not clear whether all those are counted. But Iowa, the president seems to have a lead in that state with 7 electoral votes. Then we got New Mexico. New Mexico is President Bush has a lead of nearly 30,000, 29,000 votes. But there's a couple of curious things about New Mexico. And the decision desk people pointed out to me here at Fox that New Mexico is currently showing on the board fewer votes cast than were cast in 2000. This is true of none of the other target states. We've seen turnout go up in Republican areas in target states. We've seen turnout go up in Democratic areas in target states. And there's no reason to believe that New Mexico is an exemption from the rule. There is some unclarity about whether or how many of all the votes cast have been reported, and the absentee votes in many cases have not been reported. So while this looks like a big margin for Mr. Bush, there were some real oddities about the counting of the vote 4 years ago, and so there is hesitation to call this state for the president, even though he's got a lead of 30,000 votes as compared to Al Gore's lead of 366 votes 4 years before.
So it doesn't look like we're going to get either of these for a while, or what?
I think that it does not look like we're going to get either of those for a while. There's probably a better bet for Iowa, which has got more regular vote methods than New Mexico does, if I could use that word. In Wisconsin, we've got a 15,000 vote edge for John Kerry. with a variety of rural counties to come in. Most of Milwaukee, city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County has already come in, and similarly most of Dane County, Madison, which is a big margin for the Democrats. Not clear to me whether or not George W. Bush gets enough votes in these rural areas to erase a 15,000 vote carry margin. It's possible, but by no means assured, and there are some Democratic rural counties that are still out there.
Okay, Michael, thanks very much. Another race we can call now for president. There's no check mark up there, but we're calling, Fox News is projecting, there it goes, the Hawaii presidential race for Senator Kerry. Plenty of precincts still out, but the margin is such that we believe he'll be the winner there, as was widely expected, although, of course, there was the Dick Cheney visit out there in the final days when the race had appeared closer than anybody thought. That gave them some hope, but not to be realized. Senator Kerry picks up another few electoral votes. He now stands at 242 against 269 for the president. That's the latest we have from New Mexico, a state we're not prepared to call because there's some uncertainties about where some of the vote is, that's out might come from. Total vote out there has been less than imagined, so we're a little concerned about that. But the president has a 5-point lead with 96% in. Looks like he will eventually win that state, but we're being careful about it. That would put him, of course, over 270 and make him the clear winner. Nevada, the president is now inched ahead of Senator Kerry by 16,000 votes after trailing. This is what the Republicans predicted. We're still not prepared to call that race either. That, of course, like any other state, would put the president over. And finally, Iowa, we're watching that. The president holding on to a 12,000 vote lead, all but 2% of the precincts in. Statistically, I suppose something is possible could happen for Senator Kerry there. We don't expect it, but we're and in Wisconsin, Senator Kerry ahead by 19,000 votes, 9% of the precincts yet to report. That's statistically possible for the president to turn that around. Not expected, but that would bring Senator Kerry ever closer. As you can see, 269 to 242, a margin that would allow the president to win the election in the House of Representatives. Obviously, he'd rather win it outright with the people.
Hello, Bob. Well, the Bush campaign believes they have won Ohio in spite of the reluctance by the Kerry campaign to go ahead and chalk that up as a Bush victory. And John Edwards' statement tonight was very much like Al Gore 4 years ago. But the Bush campaign is convinced it has won Ohio and that there is almost no chance that the Kerry campaign could pull it out. Here you see the 51 to 48 as it now stands, with the president about 140,000 votes higher. Now, that is almost exactly what the Bush campaign had been anticipating. Now, there are 140,000 provisional ballots in Ohio. Those are the ones that are in question and have to be counted later. Now, historically, Bush campaign strategists say only about 7 to 20% of provisional ballots end up being counted. So their view is that even if he did way better than what is usually the case with provisional ballots, there is no way that they could pull off Ohio. No way that Kerry could win Ohio. Nevertheless, as you heard Senator Edwards say earlier tonight, they waited 4 years. They can wait one more night for the results. So they clearly intend to wait a while. Now, one of the other things here is that the White House has not quite given up the prospect of the president saying something tonight. They are waiting on Nevada and New Mexico. Now, let's look at Nevada, where the results, where the Bush campaign had been encouraged all night. They were watching, especially around Las Vegas. You see here the president 2 points ahead, and the vote there, a pretty good margin for the president. It's a fairly small state, obviously, so you've got about 20,000. They had thought that they would lose as many as 25,000 in and around Las Vegas. In fact, they lost only a few thousand, so they look to be headed to victory there.
So far, not a word from him. We don't know why he's not coming down to talk to people. John Thune is across the street at Republican headquarters. He hasn't come down to talk to his supporters. I talked with one of his press people a little while ago who told me that he doesn't want to say anything about this election until he knows he's won it.
Now, the campaign's put a lot of energy into the swing state of New Mexico and its 5 electoral votes, which I'll remind you last time went to Mr. Gore, but This time, President Bush ahead right now by some 25,000 votes. And if that holds up, indeed, well, now we got 99% of the precincts in. Oh, we're looking at New Mexico. That also looking stronger for the president. Both of those very important.
What's happening in Ohio? The Kerry camp at this point unwilling to concede that state, even though it does look and appears that President Bush has taken Ohio. We will continue to focus on that race when we come back. Stay with us.
But even if there were 150, let's say 150,000 provisional ballots, now we're looking at that. There's 130,000 difference, 150,000 right there we're looking at. Right. Is there any real possibility with 99% of the precincts in that this outcome is going to change?
In my judgment, not really.
Still no definite answer yet as you look at live numbers of the popular vote for the President of the United States, Mr. Bush, in this case. You may remember 4 years ago, President Bush won the presidency, did not win the popular vote. Not the case here. He has a majority of the vote here, 56 million to Kerry's 52 million. Numbers still coming in, but we're pretty close to the end. This is Fox News continuing coverage of You Decide 2004.
Everybody, we are taking a look at the swing states that are in play in this presidential contest. There you have it. You take a look at Ohio right now. We've got John Kerry with 48% and to George Bush's 51%. President Bush, the projected winner there with 100% of the precincts reporting in. Florida. Kerry with 47% to Mr. Bush's 52%. Again, Mr. Bush, the projected winner there with 99% of the precincts reporting in. Pennsylvania, again, we see it is a 99% of the precincts reporting in with John Kerry 51 to George Bush's 49%. Iowa still in play, 49% going to John Kerry and 50% to George Bush. 99% of those precincts reporting in at this hour.
We had President Bush just about 45 minutes ago leading 52% to 47% with 98% of the precincts counted. Well, now with 99%, the Secretary of State has kind of updated those numbers, and now we've got a dogfight again, saying that President Bush is only leading by 3,000 votes, 50% to 49%.
All right, we're going to give you a look right now. 3 states election results in. Michigan going to John Kerry by a margin of 51% to 48%. 91% of the precincts in there.
In the state of New Jersey, this was a little bit of a contest, much tighter than some people said. Then expanded to a bigger victory for Kerry than the polls said in the last 24 hours. 53% for Senator Kerry.
There is Wisconsin. We got 99% of the precincts reporting. And Wisconsin, one of those states too close to call, according to our latest estimates at 4 a.m. There are 4 states that Fox News is calling right now as too close to call. That's Wisconsin, Iowa, Nevada, and New Mexico. We are projecting George Bush the winner in Ohio, although Kerry staffers are saying they still believe they have a chance of pulling out a win there. It's the provisional ballot situation. We're going to be talking much more about that throughout the next couple of hours.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of the graphics as you get up at 2 minutes after 6 Eastern Standard Time. In the national race, the President of the United States is leading with the popular vote. As you can see right there, he has 51% to Mr. Kerry, who has got 48%.
And put them together, Stephen, that's a heck of a turnout for this country.
Absolutely. George Bush has received in excess of about 57 million votes. John Kerry has 53 million. In other words, the president, right now, the popular vote leads by 4 million.
And when we talk about this election and we talk about the record number of people that did come out, and by just how close, right now in New Mexico, with 99% of the precincts in, George Bush is leading by only about 3,500 votes.
Yeah, and Kieran, look at Florida. Now, early on, it looked like John Kerry was going to take that according to the exit polls, but the president really has emerged, and this is not, it's close, but not nearly as close as last time, where we had to wait 30-plus days to find out. And so far, very few reports of any trouble at the booth.
Then in the swing state of Pennsylvania, things opposite from Florida, John Kerry receiving 51% of the vote, and the President of the United States will not put PA in his column.
When you actually see the results and find out that Tom Daschle today lost his Senate seat and a lot of power for his state in the process, you know there's something different happening in this country.
John Thune in 2002 lost by a very slim margin to Tim Johnson. He ran again against Daschle, long time incumbent, and ended up pulling out a win by about 8,700 votes in that state. There's a look at the polls closing there in South Dakota with 100% of the precincts in. John Thune, 51%.
One other hotly contested battle out in Colorado. Peter Coors, the heir to the beer fortune, lost. Also down in Florida, it looks as if Martinez has picked up a win. So the GOP will control the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House.
In Louisiana, Congressman David Vitter becomes the first Republican to be elected to Senate in the state since Reconstruction. Vitter beat out Democratic Congressman Chris John, winning more than 50% of the vote. And Vitter will take the seat of retiring Democratic Senator John Breaux. And it looks like the House GOP picked up several seats. One of the few bright spots for the Democrats, Illinois, where Melissa Bean narrowly beat Republican incumbent Phil Crane. Crane represented Chicago's northern suburbs for 35 years and was the longest-serving Republican in the House. In Texas, Republicans knocked off 4 veteran Democrats with the help of newly redrawn congressional district lines. The country's most expensive House race featured a battle of 2 incumbents in which GOP Representative Pete Sessions prevailed over Democrat Martin Frost. And in Kentucky's 4th District, Republicans also picked up an open Democratic seat. Businessman Jeff Davis beat out Democrat Nick Clooney, the father of actor George Clooney. But there are 2 Senate races still too close to call in Florida and Alaska. In Florida, Republican Mel Martinez claimed victory earlier today. He is ahead with 99% of the vote in, but Democrat Betty Castor refused to concede. She is preparing to challenge the results. And in Alaska, the votes are still being counted with 98% of the vote in. Republican Lisa Murkowski is leading over Democrat Tony Knowles. Meanwhile, Republican John Thune won the Senate race in South Dakota against incumbent Democrat Tom Daschle.
We've been looking live throughout the morning at Beacon Hill, where John Kerry is staying this morning in his residence. We've been waiting to hear from him. Now we're getting these reports that he has called President Bush to concede. Just hearing that within the last couple of minutes. What do you suppose was his thinking? Was there a very important task in conceding early and not sort of dragging the nation through anything like 2000 again?
Yeah, I think probably what they were trying to figure out is exactly how many provisional votes there were. Really, sort of a very simple thing, but obviously something that takes some time. Because last night we kept hearing, oh, it was going to be 250,000. No, there were 25,000 in Cleveland. There were a lot of rumors. So I think they probably wanted to take their time. You do not want to concede too early if, in fact, you think you've actually won the state. You know, ask Al Gore about that. I mean, that happened when he was about to concede, and then Florida came back into play 4 years ago. So I think they're probably just trying to get the facts straight. And if the facts are that there aren't that many provisional ballots, then I think the race is over.
Right. And Larry, back to you. I mean, the popular vote with Al Gore. He won that. Everybody loves it. Oh, he won the popular vote. He won the popular vote. But important to remember, he won that popular vote by a fraction of a percentage. This time there really wasn't any question about who won the popular vote.
Well, yeah, I'd say 537,000 is a substantial number of votes, and that's what Gore beat Bush by in 2000. But 4 million is obviously approximately 8 times the margin by which Gore won.
I'm saying, sure.
You know, that's 3 percentage points. I'll tell you, that would be tough to sell.
Elaine, what surprised you the most about this election?
I think what surprised me the most was that the turnout increases, first of all, weren't really as big as some people were getting all excited about and projecting. And I think the second thing that surprised me is that the turnout really was equally high on both sides. That, in other words, you seem to have had simply greater interest all the way across, as opposed to our more conventional wisdom that high turnout would benefit a challenger. And I think that that is different than what a lot of people expected.
Well, hi, Shepard. Yeah, I was just in White House Press Secretary Scott McClellan's office a few moments ago. All indications were big smiles in the White House press office. Obviously, people here at the White House and also on the Kerry side worked extremely hard to go through this 2004 election. All the aides inside the press office were all smiles. Scott McClellan said that he wanted a few moments before he gave us the details of this call between Senator Kerry and President Bush. There's the map out on the screen of the red states and blue states, the red states being the ones won by President Bush, the blue states won by Senator Kerry. Pretty predictable in a lot of the states that went the president's way, similar to the pattern of states he won 4 years ago, states like Florida and Ohio. The one that President lost this time around that he won the last time was New Hampshire. But we know that Senator Kerry did make the phone call to President Bush. We got a sense from Chief of Staff Andy Card here at the White House very early this morning when he went to the Reagan building to address supporters here in Washington that the White House and President Bush specifically wanted to give Senator Kerry a chance to take a look at the numbers, talk to his people on the ground in battleground places like Ohio, and perhaps consider what his next move might be. It didn't take terribly long after Senator Kerry huddled with some of his advisors in Boston. He made a phone call to President Bush. We're waiting for details of that phone call and the timetable of how things will play out in the hours ahead for President Bush.